Wait.
It's there.
No, I can't start it. Okay,
it's fine. It's fine. The numbers. Okay. Yeah, the letter of satisfaction serves both parties. Okay, if you've come up with an agreement and you guys agree to it, have him basically send the DJ a letter of satisfaction. What that does, it closes the case.
Okay, so this may be in 2 parts because my phone got knocked over and I think it stopped filming. So I'm going to put this out on 2 parts. We had a little technical difficulties.
So that means next week, if you got
we'll keep on going. I'll just put it out part 1, part 2, but so that we can get through this.
Okay.
So yeah, but we were saying never, always check with the MDJ's office if you come to an agreement and the landlord is satisfied and everything is good. Not that the landlord would lie to you, but double check. Double check to make sure that the eviction case has been withdrawn. Check with the office where it was filed. Okay, and the last question is, if the landlord receives a judgment that they can proceed with the eviction, what rights does the tenant have going forward? And we touched on a little bit of that.
Yes, we did. We basically said you can go for appeal, trial de novo. Mm-hmm. But think of evictions as a 2-step process. The first step, you've got a judgment against your tenant for eviction. So you've got a request for removing you, okay, and judge granted that. The possession, okay, the landlord has on the 11th day after receiving that judgment, he has to request a letter for possession of his property. Okay, he cannot evict you without a letter of possession. Mm-hmm. Period. And I've been involved in cases that the landlord came back and got the eviction, went out and started throwing people's stuff in the street. Quickest way for that landlord to be spending some money is he can't do that. Okay? Until he gets a letter of possession. And then with that letter of possession, he can't execute that for 10 days. On the 11th day, you get the eviction order. He has 11 days to get the order for possession. He has another 10 days before he can forcibly have you removed. Mm-hmm. Okay, which means that on the 11th day, a constable, not a police department, not a police officer, a constable will basically physically remove you if you're still there from that property.
Well, normally what we see is not, like picking somebody up by the scruff of their neck and throwing them out. But, the constable is there and the landlord says, the constable says, okay, it's time to go. Yeah. The landlord is there, they change the locks. So it's really important if you haven't moved, you should move. Hopefully you have moved by this time. But definitely start the process once
I got the order of possession. He can't change that lock until that 11th day.
Well, I'm talking about when the constable comes.
Constable comes, he can change the lock at that point in time,
right.
Not before then.
Not before then.
Yeah, actually, this was in class. We've had examples where a person wanted to leave. The constable can, and 9 times at that point in time, the constable called the police department because he needs that backup. Okay, because he's going to, he can physically remove you. He can physically kick the door in. He's allowed to do that to get you to move, to get you out of it.
Yeah,
I've had, and there's been cases where people have, not to be evicted, they just lay down in the middle of the floor and say, no, take me out of it. And the constable will
drag them out.
Well, pull them out, yes. We'll actually pick them up and take them out. And why you want the police officer there is because if the person interferes with that, resist. Actually, sometimes people, and there's been some articles in the paper where a constable up in Halifax was killed because he wanted to physically remove somebody. And they said they weren't going to go. And they unalived the constable right there. Now, that's bigger, and again, so at that point in time, the procedure is that if you have to go and forcibly remove somebody, make sure it's a police officer with you. It's for your protection.
Well, I'm talking about, here at the Fair Housing Council, we're talking about the normal eviction situation, not these tragedies that can happen, that we know
So
can
again,
happen.
if a guy comes, if they're going to come to you and they're going to ask you to leave, and with a constable, leave your possessions. Your possessions, the landlord is not allowed to just take your possessions from on the street that point in time.
Right.
He has 15 days. He has to notify you, because he has to notify you that your possessions are protected. After that, if you leave them there and you still want them left there, he can charge you. He can charge you for storage.
Okay, so we're talking about is it 10 or 15 days where you should be making for whatever you didn't take, arrangements, an agreement with the landlord. I'm going to come. What's a good day for you? I have a truck now. I can take the rest of my belongings. Yeah. So just because the locks are changed and you can no longer get into your unit, it doesn't mean that the landlord can just take your stuff and sell it or trash it or do whatever he wants to do. There's a certain period of time where you should be able to get back into that home and remove your belongings. Now, after that you're saying 15 days.
That's 15 days. 15 days to remove the possessions, and he make a request to the landlord that I need time to get it. I need time to remove my possessions. 15 days. After that, the landlord can charge you for storage fees.
Okay, so after on the 16th day, 16th to 30th, they can charge you for storage fees, and after the 30th day, then it's considered abandoned, and the landlord can do what they want to do with it, sell it, trash it, whatever.
You had a question the last time I was here. We've been dealing with tenant landlord, not abandoned properties, but mobile properties. That was a question that was raised, where you got a mobile home, you own the home.
Yes.
Okay.
Mobile homes is something that we'll probably have to do another.
Okay, because that's something that is can probably come up more and more and more.
Yes.
You rent the land. You don't rent. If you own the home, you rent the land, and tenant landlord rules cover that. DJs have total venue over and jurisdiction over mobile homes. That was something that was needed to the DJs.
And that's new, you're saying?
In 2016.
That was, okay, that's fairly recent.
Yes.
Yeah. We get mobile home calls here, quite frequently. And when they do, the counselors here are very knowledgeable about the mobile home issue. I am not as knowledgeable as the senior counselors. So that's always been the bane of my work here. It's the mobile home parks. They're a little different.
There's something we didn't talk about was pay and stay. So,
right. I meant to get back to that.
Because up until the time that constable shows up, if the request was for money only and not for the possession order came because he wanted his property, but if the original court order was for payment, failure to pay, you have up until the time that constable shows up to basically bring your account up to date. If you got all the money right then and there, the eviction, forcible eviction will stop. If you can pay, but again, it's that the landlord asks. We call it pay and stay. Did he ask for the initial order? Was that for failure to pay rent or for possession of property?
Right.
Okay, it was for possession of property. Pay and stay won't.
So it must be whatever is on that court order.
Yes.
Say the landlord asked for $2,500 and the MDJ said $1,400, then
it's $1,400.
It's $1,400.
Yeah.
If you say, "Oh, wait a minute, let me get my checkbook," does that count? I mean, if the landlord says, "No, I'm not taking a check for this back rent or for this judgment, only cash and money order."
Not necessarily, and the reason why is that you commit a criminal crime. You commit a crime if you pass an instrument.
Well, we're not talking about. We're just talking about.
No, you're saying if he writes that check out, and the landlord says, I don't want to take out cash.
Or money order, or a
money-
cashier's check.
A cash equivalent.
Anything but a check.
Okay. And I, as a landlord, I would say I would take this is just me talking.
Most landlords, when you're behind, you have a judgment, will say, I do not want a check. But is it a... So would it depend on what's in the lease? I mean, if the landlord says, I accept checks, but the judgment is not going to say how you must pay.
That's right. Judgment's going to say this is the amount. You basically in
well, here's
US
the
currency.
Thing. So it may take a couple of days for that check to clear the banking system and hit the landlords. You have to be able to pay right then and there. So I guess it would be my thinking that because it needs to be satisfied right then and there, you don't have time for it to clear the bank account. You must pay with cash or money order.
It is not stated.
Or check.
It is not.
Not check. Bank check.
There's no statute that states that.
But you have to pay. You have to satisfy the judgment right there.
You satisfy
when
the
the constable.
But it doesn't tell you how you have to satisfy. It has to be.
It has to be immediate.
Immediate. And if you hand them a check,
that's not immediate.
Right. Well, it depends. You think it's immediate, and in today's society, it's 24 hours before
but you don't have another 24 hours. It's the constable.
So you basically you money order, because money order or cash
is immediate.
Immediate.
That's cash. That's what it is, cash.
Yes, you should satisfy it immediately. Okay, but if you don't and it's accepted, be careful, because if that check isn't honored by, you write a check and that doesn't get honored, you're not looking at it. You're looking at something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it might be up to the landlord.
It's up to him. If the landlord accepts the check, fine. If he doesn't, he can say, I want in cash. You have to satisfy the judgment. Right?
Okay. Okay.
That stops the pay. That stops you from forcibly evicted. Okay. And after you get the judgment. Anytime after that, after you get the eviction judgment, you can come clear. You can bring your account clear. You don't have to wait till the constable shows up.
Oh yeah, you don't have to, but you have right up until the constable shows up. Now I can say that 99.9% of the time that landlord is not going to accept the check, and you cannot, say no. Here's your payment. You have to accept this check. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't.
Unless
I wouldn't run that.
And don't expect unless you say landlord take you to the bank and I'll take you to the bank and get it done then.
You may not even have that time, and the constable is standing right there. Now the landlord might say, and the constable
being paid
say, "Hey, I'll wait."
Yeah, he's being paid. The landlord is paid. That constable is paid. It's in the fees.
Yeah, the constable could wait.
Yeah,
but it's just in your best interest to have the cash in hand.
Because you want that satisfaction document going back to the DJ saying this obligation's been satisfied.
Yeah.
Okay, because that saves you, because if it hasn't been, you could be you open yourself up not for tenant landlord, but in civil law at that point in time.
Right.
Okay.
So even if you're evicted, because you didn't have the money, you still have that judgment hanging out there. You still owe that landlord. So it's in your best interest
and that transitions over to
pay it off.
Let's say you were evicted, you didn't, and he had a $1,400 judgment against you, and you said, I'm gone. They evict you.
Right.
That $1,400 judgment doesn't go
anywhere. You
still owe it. It still owes it, and he can go back to civil court to get that, to basically look for some type of enforcement for that. Or he could have transferred to common police court. DJs, we can't, used to be DJs could wage attachment and stuff. Can't do that. It has to be to common police. They took that away from us. So he could get that satisfied through levies or wage attachment, but it has to be through common police court, not the DJ.
Right.
Okay, and that's when he makes that request. So it doesn't just, you got evicted, what you owe him doesn't get erased. It depends on if he really wants to go after you. If he wants to go after you, he'll pay costs to have his to basically get the
and get wage garnishments and all that.
And a levy against you, yes.
Okay, so and security deposits. We get a lot of questions about security deposits after a person moves or after a person is evicted. So that is,
If you owe the landlord money for failure to pay rent, your security deposit can be used to offset what he says you owe him. And let's say you owe him 3 months worth of rent. He lets you go that far, and he's got a month. He's got your security deposit for a month. You had judgment against you for eviction. Once that process has run its course, and he's got possession, that he can use that security deposit to help satisfy what that judgment would have been. It's not. Again, if it's 1 month, well, you hit 2 months for security deposit on record, then he still owes you. He owes you that second month that security deposit he requested.
Now, see, my position has always been that a security deposit is for the. I know a lot of landlords would take from if you owe $1,000, you owe a month's rent, and you have $1,000 there, they may pay it off with the security deposit. You just don't get your security deposit back. I know that happens a lot, but
or damage.
It's not the purpose of the security deposit. The security deposit is for damages above and beyond normal wear and tear,
right.
Not to satisfy debts that you owe for rent.
Correct.
So,
once you go through the eviction process, your security deposit becomes it's a quasi asset that landlord's holding for you.
Mm-hmm.
If he's got a judgment against you, he can go after that asset. Okay, and subtract back. Sometimes they'll do that.
But can they just say I'm taking it, or is there a process that they
process
need to
you
go
have to
through?
make the request.
Okay, so with the landlord.
You make the request to the landlord, but you also file that with DJ too. Those are basically because again, you have to return the security deposit. If it's not
The
eviction,
landlord does.
Landlord will go.
But the landlord a lot of times will say, "You owe me $2,000 in rent. You gave me $1,000 in security deposit. I'll take the $1,000 security deposit. You owe me $1,000."
He will get he will go not to tenant landlord. That becomes a civil case.
Mm-hmm.
He will go in front of that DJ and say, "Fine, I have a $2,000. I had a $2,000 judgment. I took $1,000 of the this try to satisfy portions of it, but this is what's left outstanding." He's gonna go back to that DJ and he's gonna get civil judgment. He's gonna get a civil case against you.
But most of the time, the landlord will just take it. I'm not giving you back your security deposit because you owe that to me for the rent.
You as a tenant, you can basically take him. You can start civil proceedings to recover your money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now remember, it's civil proceedings, and he's going to cross file at that point.
Right.
Okay. And how we look at that, we net it out.
Right.
It goes from the courts, and the courts are fine. They net it out. Whoever has try to net to zero, doesn't net to zero. Whoever owes the money, they basically get that. So that would be a cross complaint. But the tenant at that point can bring a civil suit for security
For their
back.
security deposit.
Now, with the landlord can go back and say, "Well, I had to do repairs and stuff." He better have a receipt for that.
Right. So here's the other thing about when you are evicted is as odd as it may seem, you should give that landlord your forwarding address.
Has to. It's mandatory. Because again, if there's any money owed to you, he
Right.
has to give it back to you. And if he doesn't, there's a penalty associated with him not giving that
Right.
money.
And that's how we find out. That's how, a lot of times people don't get their security deposit back because the landlord didn't know where to send it. So they can make that argument. So I just used it to, satisfy
You're responsible for it.
the outstanding judgment.
Yes.
Right? That happens a lot.
Yes.
But you should be giving the landlord your forwarding address because within a certain period of time, what is it, 30 days,
30 days.
they need to give you a listing of deductions from the security deposit.
Right. And
That is for damages
Right.
above and beyond normal wear and tear.
Correct.
Not just that he had to
put a new carpet down.
put, paint or something that he was,
No.
but it needs to be really for damages, serious damages.
And failure, if you're not providing with the security deposit, your address, you can't haul him off the court for failure to return the security deposit.
Right, exactly. And that's where a lot of people miss the opportunity to get any kind of refunds and all.
Right.
Now, if they, so the landlord does not give you that list within 15 days, they know where you live, and they did not give you that list, itemized list of deductions within 15 days. And they have to give you back your security deposit within 30 days.
Yes.
Unless you gave them 2 security deposits, and then that's a whole different issue, right? We touched on that before.
Right.
But, yeah, but they need to give you back the security deposit, less any damages, within 30 days. Now, if they don't...
You have a right to bring cause of action against that landlord, and he will get fined. It's 2 times whatever is being asked for.
You can sue him for 2 or 3 times that security deposit.
Yes. So landlords, again, if you give a proper mailing address, they tend to get that money back to you because they don't want that 2 times factor coming in.
Yeah, the possibility of that.
Right.
Right.
And even for eviction, same thing goes in play. Okay, eviction.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You forfeit your security deposit. You can say you forfeit, but if you put down more money security deposit than what what that judgment says, he has to give you back the difference.
Yeah, and that's where I am.
He has to give you back the difference.
I have a question about whether they can take the security deposit to satisfy that judgment at all. Because the rent is the rent and damages are damages.
Legally, no, they can't.
Right, without going through a court process for it. But a lot of times we will see that that's exactly what happens.
Civil process at that point in time.
A lot of times people are in an eviction situation. They just want to move on with their life and forget about that. And they could be leaving money on the table.
Be careful, even with something like that. So let's say you had security deposit that would have covered the judgment, okay, and he took that, it was taken, okay, that judgment is still on the record.
It's still on the record.
Right. You bet if he takes that, he better provide a letter of satisfaction back to the court.
The question is, and I guess this is a question for, because it might be, I don't know, I mean, landlord-tenant is legal, but for Fair Housing Council, when we're talking about rights and responsibilities of landlord and tenant, would the landlord really be obligated to, before they take that security deposit, to satisfy that debt? Do they have to take it to court? And you are saying that yes,
because
they can't just take it. More than likely, a lot of times they do just take the security deposit.
Remember, when your security deposit, when you give them the security deposit, that becomes an escrow account.
Right.
You can't touch that. That's like a lock. That's like a lock box.
But he's saying I got a judgment. They don't. I got a judgment on the rent.
That landlord at that point in time, if he wants to take that, if he wants to use your security deposit, he should get a civil judgment.
For the security deposit.
Bingo, because that's a lockbox. You're not allowed to touch that.
It's for damages.
That's right.
Not for back rent.
That's right.
That's the whole question. Can they? We see a lot of times that they will take it once they have a judgment. I'm just not going to give you back your security deposit. I'll deduct that from the amount that you owe me, and just keep it moving.
Cause of action he can raise.
And the tenant can if they decide to. Now, but the landlord needs to know where the tenant is living now.
Yes.
And a lot of times they won't take a P.O. box. I'm not going to send this check to you for your security deposit to a P.O. box. I need to have a physical address.
That's a two-sided sword. Okay, so I know I got a judgment against you. You want your security deposit back. I know where you're at. Now I know where to get. Now I have information where I can get my judgment enforced.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Think about. I hate to say it sounds bad, but okay, you gave me your address where to send the security deposit back, but I got a judgment against you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. at that point in time, I had a way of reaching out to get and notifying the courts on how to enforce that judgment. And remember, it's TMP, tangible, non-perishable, or personal property. He can get that judgment enforced against him.
Okay.
And I actually know a situation where we have a constable. She was very good with this. She would get judgments against people, and she would go find their cars and send the trucker and take the wheels off her car.
All kinds of things here once you get those judgments.
But you gotta have that address. Now, failure to give him that address, you lose your right back. He said make the attempt to get a security deposit back. He basically notified the courts. I made an attempt. I got return. Mail was returned. I have no way of contacting them. The judge will give an order then.
But that's still a case where they had to go to the judge before they could just snatch the security deposit, forfeiture. Yeah. Okay, well, that's it today. That was a lot. I know. That's why I said, evictions.
Pay $500 and get this, okay? Because no
one wants to go through all of that.
Yeah, but these are the rules that we have to play by. I get tested on this, but these are the rules that every judge, whether at the lower courts or even the common police courts, this is what you're going to be judged to. And it actually tells you. I know,
but normal.
Look at it online.
Normal people have a life to live, and so
and I have a live canvas full of reading.
Unless that's what you do. That's why you have other people that kind of, focus on this stuff all day.
I was in civil court.
Okay, I know you got a story.
Yes, a good civil court.
We can talk about that when I press the off button.
Okay, so person one.
Okay, but so thank you for joining us again, and I know this was a lot. So, but as usual. If you have a legal case or a legal issue or a legal question, find a lawyer. But always feel free to give the Fair Housing Council a call if you have any questions about your rights and responsibilities as a renter or even a homeowner. Thank you for joining us, Claude.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll see you the next time.
Yes.
All righty. Bye-bye.